Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. First things first, next week's video will be the monthly Q&A. So please post your questions related to martial art, Xiudao, and Chinese culture in the comment section or in the Ask DAOI channel on the DAOI Discord, or email me if you prefer to be anonymous. So far, we have done 30 monthly Q&As, and I continue to be impressed by the quality of the questions asked by our community members. I look forward to many more. In the last 2 weeks' videos, I have introduced Coccyx Practice in Xing and Tai Chi. Many of our community members gave good comments. Today's video will focus on the Coccyx Practice in Ba Gua. But first, let's warm up with Dao De Jing commentary and Xiudao. Today, we will talk about Chapter 9. Following the introduction of the concept of Ren Dao, or the Dao of humans, Lao Tzu criticized some social phenomena and then concluded this chapter by saying, quote, 功成身退天之道也, end quote. Translation: Once achievement has occurred, one withdraws. For such is the Tao of heaven. End translation. It is worth noting that sometimes people translate the word 退 as retire or hide. But according to the most commonly cited commentaries in history, this word should actually be translated to withdraw. It is not a total disappearance, but just a withdrawal from the previous position. Again, Lao Tzu used the term 天道, or the Dao of heaven, to indicate that Ren Dao, or the Dao of humans, should follow the 天道. In Dao De Jing, when Lao Tzu used the term 天道, he actually meant to tell his audience what to follow. So in this chapter, Lao Tzu criticized 4 social phenomena in order to conclude his philosophical concept, 功成身退, or once achievement has occurred, one withdraws, or when your work is done, then withdraw. Those 4 criticized behaviors are called 持而盈之, 揣而锐之, 金玉满堂, 富贵而骄. End quote. Translation: Continue to fill a bucket up it is full. Keep sharpening a point when it's already sharp. Gold and jade fill the hall, and wealth and honors lead to arrogance. End translation. According to Lao Tzu, all excessive non-wu wei actions will lead to disaster. This is a very famous Dao De Jing chapter. Many terms used today are actually from this chapter, such as 金玉满堂, 自于其咎, or gold and jade fill the hall, misfortune then will come to yourself, and so on. Lao Tzu's work exemplifies how a great philosophy book should bring common sense and actionable advice to ordinary people. Now, let's talk about the application of this chapter in Xiudao. Briefly speaking, for the last 2,000 years, Taoist practice has followed the concept of 功成身退, described in Dao De Jing. In Xiudao practice, refining the energy with different strength levels of the fire or mind is a critical factor in the whole process. In ancient times, Taoist scholars used the term 火候 to describe it. 火 means fire, which is the level of mind work, applied in the process. How means timing, which is the right method applied at the right time. Internal energy refinement is about dealing with the prenatal energy at the right time with the right types of mind work. So, sometimes it needs a strong mind called 无火 or martial fire, while sometimes it needs a subtle mind called 文火 or civil fire. Those two types of fires stand for different levels of mental strength. In other words, a specific energy reaction requires a specific method to manage it in terms of the type of focus. In Xiudao practice, both over-focus and under-focus are not the right conditions to generate the Jindan or golden elixir. For example, when the 文火 or civil fire is required, but you still use the 无火 or martial fire to refine energy, then you won't achieve the expected result. By the way, I have a lot of Xiudao videos introducing this concept. Link to my Xiudao playlist is in the description. So, the term 功成身退 actually emphasizes the situation that 文火, the civil fire or the subtle mental work, is required in practice. Speaking from personal experience, very often 文火 or civil fire is more important than 无火 or martial fire. The importance of 文火 has been emphasized in all Taoist classics. For example, the 物真篇, or Understanding the Reality, written by Zhang Boduan, the founder of the Southern School of Taoism, said, quote, 未练还丹须速练，练了还须止足，若只持盈为己心，不免一朝怠如。End quote. Translation: Before reaching the great elixir, you should strengthen the fire. However, you should know to seize the fire after the great elixir has been refined. If you keep filling the water without stopping, you will not be able to avoid failure. End translation. Here, Zhang Boduan used the term 持盈 or keep filling water, a term borrowed from this chapter of Dao De Jing to describe the mistake in practice. To summarize, Lao Tzu's term 功成身退 reflects the philosophical attitude of Lao Tzu in dealing with achievement. Later Taoist practitioners applied this concept in managing the civil fire in Xiudao practice for thousands of years, which is rooted in chapter 9 of Dao De Jing. Now, let's move on to today's main topic, the Coccyx Practice in Ba Gua. Topics covered in today's video include: first, Coccyx Reviewed; second, Coccyx in Ba Gua classic documents; third, Coccyx Practice in Ba Gua; fourth, principles of Coccyx Practice in Ba Gua; fifth, misperception; sixth, demonstration; and seventh, takeaways. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Topic 1. Coccyx Reviewed. The Coccyx was commonly called 围垒 in Chinese. In my previous two videos, I introduced Coccyx practice in both Xing and Tai Chi. The history of this term has been explained in both videos. I will only briefly summarize the term 围垒 in this video. 围垒 originally meant the place where sea water gathers and flows away from. Later on, Taoist practitioners borrowed this term to express the important Taoist energy gate, the 围垒关 or the Weilui gate, or the Coccyx. Daoists believe that energy from the lower dantian normally circulates to Weilui or Coccyx, then moves upward along the spine and eventually moves downward along the front part of the body and returns to lower dantian. So, the Coccyx is the first of the three gates of energy circulation, an important place for energy refinement. Later on, about 500 years ago, martial artists adopted the word Weilui to describe the martial movement in the Coccyx area for martial power generation, which is the term borrowed from Taoist practice. The earliest written record is found in 内功四经 or Internal Practice for Classics, kept and published by Song Shirong, a second-generation Xing master. It is a widely used reference in the Xing community. At the same time, some Tai Chi classics also used this term to describe the Coccyx practice in Tai Chi. Unfortunately, most of those writings about Coccyx in Tai Chi classes were not that clear in terms of practice instruction. I also mentioned in my Xing Coccyx video that Xue Dian, who introduced the practice of Coccyx, used the term 搅为吕 or stir the Weilui to express its practice, which is the best description on this topic compared to all others in terms of clarity and precision. I also emphasized in my last two videos that Xiu Dao or Daoist meditation utilizes the Weilui differently compared to martial art practice. For example, I said that in Xiu Dao practice, Weilui is an important energy gate, which requires a practitioner to use the static method, while martial art practice requires a practitioner to use a dynamic method. The reason is very simple. In martial art practice, Weilui is used to generate martial power, but in Xiu Dao, Weilui is an important energy gate through which energy needs to pass smoothly. Different objectives require different ways to manage their practice, Weilui or Coccyx being a perfect example. Ba Gua is an internal style of martial art, which requires us to use the dynamic approach toward Coccyx practice. To summarize, Weilui, an important area in both energy refinement and martial power generation, requires a very specific and very subtle yet dynamic approach in martial art training. As I have mentioned about the Weilui practice in Xing and Tai Chi writings, how about the Weilui practice in Ba Gua documents? That brings us to the next topic. Topic 2. Coccyx in Ba Gua classic documents. Many people may think that since Coccyx is a very important area in martial art practice, and since the internal styles of martial art emphasize the internal aspect, Coccyx practice should obviously be recorded in many Ba Gua documents. Unfortunately, that is just not the case. In fact, there are very few documents directly or indirectly mentioning Coccyx practice or a practice involving the Coccyx. Let me explain. Dong Haichuan, the main Ba Gua disseminator, considered by many to be the Ba Gua founder, left behind a series of Ba Gua training poems. Even though all of those poems were actually recorded and edited by his student Quan Kaiting, the Qing Dynasty royal court bodyguard. Those contained the teachings of Dong Haichuan. Unfortunately, there is no single word directly mentioning Coccyx in any format, since in Chinese language, one term can be expressed in different ways. The first written document directly mentioning the term Wei Lui in Ba Gua practice was authored by Sun Lutang. In his Ba Gua book titled Ba Gua Quan Xue, or Ba Gua Practice, Sun wrote in the introduction section of the book titled 九要 or 9 importance, quote, 围垒上提督脉之理, or the coccyx should rise upward to follow the principle of a Du meridian. Pay attention to the word 提 or rise here, and I will explain it later. 任志成, the author of 阴阳八盘掌 or 阴阳 8 section palm, called this area 九尾. Actually, 九尾 is just another way to write 高尾, the ancient way to name Coccyx. However, in 任志成's writing, he mainly expressed the dropping downward way of Coccyx practice, or 下垂. It is worth noting that Lu Zhongren, a very prominent martial artist of Tianjin, promoted Xiao style Ba Gua Zhang. He also created the famous Lu Shi Jiegou, or Lu family structure. Lu Zhongren in teaching believed that the Wei Lui should not be pushed forward, but instead should extend it backward slightly. He even said that a dog would hide his tail when the dog loses in a fight. What he meant was that the forward-pushing coccyx is like a dog hiding his tail between its legs. In other words, a defeatist posture. So, according to this school, coccyx should extend backward slightly. By the way, due to a lack of practical information about Wei Lui in Ba Gua, some people used Tai Chi coccyx related principles for Ba Gua coccyx practice. One such proverb is called 围垒中正神贯顶满身清力顶头悬 in the translation. End quote. Translation: the Wei Lui should be centered and straight so that the spirit penetrates to the top of the head, while the whole body becomes nimble by slightly being pulled upward by suspending energy. End translation. Actually, this proverb is not suitable for Ba Gua practice specifically because of Ba Gua practice's unique body structure. To understand this proverb better, please watch last week's video titled Coccyx in Tai Chi. Link is in the description. So, despite being a critical aspect in Ba Gua training, there are not many written records mentioning Coccyx practice. Even worse, as mentioned in the Tai Chi Coccyx video released last week, since there's no unanimous agreement on the Coccyx practice, some of them sound even contradictory, and as a result, it has created a lot of confusion for a practitioner. I hope my video will help to clarify this issue. Then, how to practice Coccyx in Ba Gua? That brings us to the next topic. Topic 3. How to practice Coccyx in Ba Gua? We have to know that compared to the two other internal styles of martial arts, Ba Gua is a sideway-oriented system. In other words, a typical Ba Gua movement and its fighting strategy are to attack the opponent from the side of the body and with palms while walking. This is why very often a Ba Gua posture typically looks like walking forward while attacking sideways. In other words, hands seem to aim at the opponent located at the center of a virtual circle. This unique body structure requires a unique Ba Gua body method. The practitioner should be able to send power to the opponent while in a dynamic walking state. To make a Ba Gua strike effective, for example, a sideways strike, a 50-50 weight distribution is just not ideal. So, very often, Ba Gua postures are back-weighted instead of the body weight being evenly distributed between both legs. To maximize the martial effect, the lower dantian area has to be flexible along with the ability to be solid and powerful when necessary. To achieve this, the coccyx has to closely coordinate with the yao or the entire waist and hip area. In other words, it is not just about how to train the coccyx alone, but more importantly, it is about the coordination between the yao and the coccyx. Again, this unique approach is due to Ba Gua walking. A unique style of practice requires its practitioner to adjust the body method accordingly. This is the most important point in Ba Gua Coccyx practice, and I will elaborate on it in the following part of this video. Also, I will use the word yao instead of waist and hips in the following part because I found it to be a better collective term for the whole area. According to Sun Lutang, the Sun style Tai Chi founder, as well as Xing and Ba Gua master, said that the yao should sink downward while the coccyx should rise upward. The sinking motion of the yao is understandable, but how about the upward rising motion of the coccyx? Can anyone raise the coccyx? Well, what Sun Lutang said here means that coccyx should rise upward is an intentional motion. In other words, it is a feeling but not a physical upward push, since there's no way to raise only the coccyx without risking the stiffness of the whole area. To express this, Sun Lutang used the term 督脉之理 or the principle of the Du meridian or the governing meridian, which is the meridian in the back going from the perineum area to the top of the head. Classic martial art documents use the meridians to describe energy activity more in the context of the mind or intent rather than strong or forced physical action. A very common mistake people make when translating Chinese martial art books into English occurs due to the inability to differentiate an intention from a physical movement. For example, when we said the head should raise up, of course, you cannot keep moving your head upward forever. So, the head rising up actually expresses an intention, a feeling. The same is the case with some sinking motions, such as waist, elbows, and so on. Again, it is not a problem if someone doesn't know about it to begin with, but it is definitely a problem if someone insists on keeping this mistake caused by a lack of linguistic knowledge. So, Sun Lutang emphasized the sinking energy of the yao along with the rising energy of the coccyx. More specifically, Sun Lutang was talking about a dynamic state requirement of a coccyx practice when walking a Ba Gua circle. In some Ba Gua postures of the Donghai Chuan line, the body may lean forward more than in a typical Ba Gua posture. Furthermore, this type of forward-leaning posture is the most commonly used body structure in Yin-Yang Ba Pan Zhang, a style predating Ba Gua, which actually applies a downward coccyx motion. Let me show you a couple photos of Ren Zhicheng. In his book, he mainly used a downward pointing motion of the coccyx. I have practiced both the Donghai Chuan line and the Yin-Yang Ba Pan Zhang. Speaking from personal training experience, the downward pointing motion of the coccyx used in Yin-Yang Ba Pan Zhang is also used in Donghai Chuan line. The only difference is that the Donghai Chuan line uses this method when stabilizing a movement, but in Yin-Yang Ba Pan Zhang, the downward pointing motion is also used in forward and circular walking patterns. Now, let's talk about the backward coccyx motion. The question is, do we push the coccyx backward in the Donghai Chuan line? The answer is yes, of course. As mentioned in the previous two videos about coccyx, many principles about coccyx used in different schools are actually aimed at following the general principle. There are always exceptions, even for this case. For example, the backward motion of a coccyx in the Donghai Chuan line fits this scenario. So, when will it happen? The answer is that when stepping backward with the big step, the coccyx should extend backward and then return to the downward motion. Even more importantly, the quickly changing the previous physical state of the coccyx helps generate a stronger muscle power in practice. Again, specific movement requires a specific principle, and this is an example of it. As for Lu Zhongren's slight backward pushing motion of the coccyx, it strengthens the forward striking effect while stabilizing the body structure. I will make a video in the future to introduce this system. So let's not go any further into that system in this video. There's a lot to digest in this video already, so let's not overload ourselves. To summarize, different body structures and movements require different coccyx movements. The coccyx involvement should be analyzed specifically in order to maximize the martial effect of the coccyx in training. Now, I'd like to introduce a few principles of a coccyx practice in Ba Gua. That brings us to the next topic. Topic 4. Principles of a coccyx practice in Ba Gua. In the second section of today's video, I mentioned that the lack of a clear description of coccyx practice in Ba Gua. And even if it exists, for example, in Sun Tang's writings, there are only a couple of words naming it without any detailed explanation. This is actually a result of the advanced and subtle nature of coccyx practice. I'd like to introduce two proverbs that I created to further explain the coccyx practice in Ba Gua based on the previous sections. They are 以头眼为履 or lead the coccyx with the head, and 单腿转腰胯则沉为履 sing the coccyx when changing direction with the 腰 using a single leg in a circle walking. Let me explain them one by one. First, 以头眼为履 or lead the coccyx with the head. Sun Lutang advised raising the coccyx upward, which is correct. But raising the coccyx upward, as said earlier, is done by the mind or intent without physically forcing it. If it is still not clear, then this proverb will help you master the practice. The upward rising feeling or intention of the coccyx is achieved through the upward pulling motion with the head. This is a very subtle motion and it should be done slightly. Please pause this video and give it a try. You will find out the effect of the upward pulling motion made by the head on the coccyx. Second, 单腿转腰胯则沉为累. Sing the coccyx when changing direction with Yao using a single leg in circle walkings. In Ba Gua walking, especially when you change direction outwards of a circle, at a certain point, one leg supports your body while the other leg is moving outward of the circle. The whole lower back area and the hip of the supporting leg should sink downward. By doing so, the whole lower dantian area will be not only flexible and relaxed, but also suitably positioned for power release while maintaining a stable body structure. So, the sinking motion of the whole area, especially the coccyx, is the critical aspect of this type of movement. Pause this video and try it out yourself. It's always better to physically feel the concept in addition to theoretically understanding it. There are many other important principles that guide the Coccyx practice in Ba Gua, which I will talk about in the future. Now, let's move on to the next section in which I will debunk a common misperception. Topic 5. Misperception. Any practice involving subtle practice without having enough reference would definitely be prone to misperceptions, and the Coccyx practice in Ba Gua is no exception. In today's video, I'd like to mention one of them. Some people believe that there is only the upward and downward motion of the coccyx in Ba Gua practice. Let me debunk it today. In a style like Ba Gua, there are many movements at different angles, speed, and types of power. So, it is just impossible to have only upward and downward motions for the coccyx. Very often, our body is not fully vertical. In addition, Ba Gua body posture shares a similarity with Xing body posture in that very often there's a slightly forward leaning motion. Given that conditions, the upward and downward motions of the coccyx are definitely not enough to cover all the directions of power. For example, the whole lower dantian area, especially the coccyx area, can push forward and backward as well as upward and downward. It's just that a skilled Ba Gua practitioner performs all those movements without paying conscious attention to it. So, the notion that there are only upward and downward motions for the coccyx is just incorrect. It does not reflect reality. Furthermore, failure to utilize it correctly would mean the lower dantian area being unable to generate strong martial power, rendering the practice ineffective as a martial art. Now, let me demonstrate a Ba Gua form to illustrate the Coccyx practice. Topic 6. Demonstration. Today, I'd like to demonstrate a Ba Gua movement. The name is 懒龙翻身, or dragon turns the body. Please pay attention to the body motion led by the coccyx motion. It is very subtle, but the effect is obvious. OK， 懒龙翻身。Topic 7. Takeaways. First, Coccyx Reviewed. The term 围垒 is an important area of our body in both energy refinement and martial power generation. It requires a very specific and very subtle yet dynamic approach in martial art training. Second, Coccyx practice in Ba Gua. Since it is a subtle movement and a key practice to generate martial power, different schools emphasize different aspects of its practice without reaching a unanimous agreement on its practice. However, the reason for this issue is due to the fact that each school emphasizes a specific practice instead of covering a general principle, which makes it confusing. Third, principles of Coccyx practice in Ba Gua. Two important principles of Coccyx practice in Ba Gua are: first, 以头引为垒 or lead the Coccyx with the head. Second, 单腿转腰胯则沉为垒 Sing the Coccyx when changing direction with 腰 using a single leg in circle walking. Fourth, misperception. Some people believe that there is only the upward and the downward motion of the Coccyx in Ba Gua practice. Remember, that is a misperception. The Coccyx moves in multiple directions depending on the Ba Gua movement and its function. That concludes today's video. A quick reminder to send me your questions for next week's Q&A. Thanks for watching, see you next time, and enjoy your practice.